Captain Jake Morrison stared at the screen in front of him. The distress signal was weak, barely readable through the static. His ship, the Herald, had been surveying the outer rim for 3 weeks now. Nothing exciting ever happened out here, until today. Can you clean that up? He asked his communications officer. The young woman worked her console for a moment. It's not one of ours, sir. Not human. The language is... I don't recognize it, Jake leaned forward. In his 15 years of space service, he had learned one important truth. When someone was calling for help, you answered. It did not matter who they were. Get Dr. Grant up here, and plot us a course to that signal. Within minutes, Dr. Lisa Grant arrived on the bridge. She was the best xenobiologist in the human fleet. If anyone could figure out who was sending that message, it was her. Lisa listened to the signal carefully. Her face grew serious. This is bad, Jake, really bad. They are saying their world is gone. Their sun collapsed. They are dying. Jake felt his stomach tighten. How many ships? They are not saying. But from the way they are talking, this might be all that is left of their entire species. The Herald moved fast through space, pushing its engines as hard as they could go. It took them 6 hours to reach the source of the signal. What they found made everyone on the bridge fall silent. Dozens of ships floated in the darkness. They were small, damaged, and clearly not built for long journeys. Some were barely holding together. One was already breaking apart as they watched. My God, whispered Commander Nick Patterson, Jake's tactical officer. How many people are on those ships? Lisa was already scanning them. Life signs on 43 vessels. I am reading about 3,000 individuals. Jake, these readings are strange. Their brain activity is all synchronized. I think they might be telepathic. Jake did not hesitate. Open a channel to all ships. Tell them we are here to help. It took time to establish communication. The aliens called themselves the Ashkari. They were a gentle species who had never known war. Their entire civilization had lived in one solar system. 12 billion people. Now only these few thousand remained. Their leader, a being named Solara, appeared on the screen. She looked almost human, but her skin had a soft blue glow. Her eyes were large and filled with sadness deeper than any ocean. You are humans, she said in broken English. Her people had learned it from coalition broadcasts. Thank you for coming. But you should leave. Our ships are failing. We will not survive another week. There is no reason for you to watch us die. Jake shook his head. We are not leaving. We are going to get you out of here. Solara's expression showed confusion. You do not understand. We have nothing to give you. No resources. No technology you need. No strategic value. The coalition said it would cost too much to save us. They said we are not worth the expense. Those words hit Jake like a punch. The Galactic Coalition, the great alliance of spacefaring species, had abandoned these people because saving them was not profitable. Because they were not important enough. Well, humanity disagrees, Jake said firmly. Stand by. Help is coming. He immediately sent a message back to Earth Command. What came back shocked even him. Earth's government ordered every available human ship in 3 sectors to respond. They were pulling ships from colony defense, from trade routes, from everywhere. Ambassador Kyle Hughes, Earth's senior diplomat to the coalition, sent a personal message to Jake. The coalition is calling us fools. They say we are wasting resources on a species that cannot benefit us. They are probably right, but we are human. We do not leave people to die just because saving them is expensive. Over the next few weeks, human ships arrived one by one. Cargo vessels, science ships, even a few military escorts. They brought supplies, medicine, and most importantly, hope. The rescue was not easy. The Ashkari ships were failing fast. Several collapsed before they could be evacuated. Jake watched as his crew worked around the clock, pulling survivors from dying vessels. Some ships were so badly damaged that they had to cut through the hulls to reach the people inside. Lieutenant Greg Mason coordinated the medical teams. The Ashkari biology was different from human, but not so different that human doctors could not help. They set up emergency hospitals on every ship with space. 3 months into the rescue, disaster struck. One of the Ashkari vessels, the largest one, began to break apart. There were 800 people on board. The human ship closest to it, the cargo hauler Pacific Star, moved in to help. Captain Danny Foster commanded the Pacific Star. He pushed his ship right alongside the dying Ashkari vessel. We are getting them out, he told his crew. All of them, they did. They saved every single person on that ship. But the Ashkari vessel exploded just as the last survivors were pulled clear. The blast tore through the Pacific Star's hull. The ship was destroyed. All 143 crew members died instantly. It was the first human ship lost in the rescue. It would not be the last. By the time the operation ended 6 months later, humanity had pulled every surviving Ashkari from their dying ships. But the cost was heavy. 3 human ships destroyed, 847 human lives lost. Earth's economy was struggling from the massive expense. The coalition watched and mocked. The Viridian Empire, one of the most powerful species in known space, sent a formal statement. Humanity displays the weakness of emotion over logic. They sacrifice their own for strangers. This is why they will never be truly great. But humanity did not stop with just the rescue. They gave the Ashkari a moon, a beautiful world in human-controlled space with oceans and forests. They built homes there. They provided technology and resources to help the Ashkari rebuild their civilization. Dr. Emma Walsh, a human researcher, worked closely with the Ashkari. She learned about their telepathic abilities. They are all connected, she explained to Ambassador Hughes. Every Ashkari can feel what the others feel. When their world died, all 12 billion felt it at once. The survivors carry that pain together. Hughes visited the Ashkari moon 1 year after the rescue. The settlement was growing. Ashkari children played in gardens while adults worked to build a new future. It was a future that would never have existed without humanity. Silara met him in a quiet garden. Her sadness was still there, but now there was something else. Determination. Hope. Ambassador Hughes, she said, my people wish to perform a ceremony, a bonding ritual. In our culture, when someone saves another's life, a debt is created. But this debt is not like human debts. It is written into our very souls. Hughes did not fully understand, but he agreed. That evening, every Ashkari on the moon gathered. 3,000 voices joined together in a song that had no words. Their telepathic connection created something that humans could almost feel, a vibration in the air itself. Silara spoke, and every Ashkari spoke with her. Their voices were one. Humanity gave everything to save us. They asked nothing in return. They did this because it was right. Because they are good. We are Ashkari. We do not forget. We cannot forget. She turned to Hughes, and her eyes glowed with an inner light. A favor owed is a debt eternal. When humanity calls, we will answer, no matter the cost. No matter the danger, we will come. This we bind to our genetic memory. This we swear to our collective consciousness. From this day until the last Ashkari dies, we are yours to command. Hughes felt the weight of those words. He tried to tell them it was not necessary, that humanity had not saved them to create a debt. But Silara shook her head. You do not understand, Ambassador. This is not gratitude. This is deeper. You saved our species. We owe you everything. Our children will be taught this from birth. Our very DNA will remember. When you call, we will answer. This is the Ashkari way. Hughes reported the ceremony to Earth. Most people thought it was a beautiful gesture, a touching thank you from a grateful species. They did not understand what the Ashkari had really done. They had bound themselves to humanity in a way that could never be broken. As the years passed, the Ashkari thrived on their new moon. They sent representatives to work throughout the coalition. Their telepathic abilities made them perfect for navigation and communication roles. They became valuable members of galactic society, but they never forgot. Every Ashkari wore a small symbol, a reminder of the debt. It showed a human hand reaching down to pull an Ashkari hand up from darkness. It was their most sacred image. Jake Morrison was promoted to Admiral. Lisa Grant continued her research. Nick Patterson took command of his own ship. They moved on with their lives and careers. The Ashkari rescue became history, a proud moment in human achievement, but just one of many. Only Ambassador Hughes sometimes wondered about Silara's words. A favor owed is a debt eternal. What did that really mean? When would humanity need to call in that favor? Would they ever need to? He had no way of knowing that in 15 years, the answer to those questions would shake the foundations of the galaxy itself. The debt would be called. And the Ashkari would keep their promise in ways no one could imagine. For now, humanity continued its journey among the stars. They made friends and rivals. They explored new worlds and built new colonies. They pushed for change in the coalition, arguing for more democracy and fairness. and the powerful species watched them. The Viridians, the Krell, the Zephlon, they watched humanity grow stronger and more influential. They watched, and 15 years passed since the day humanity saved the Ashkari. The galaxy had changed in that time, and so had humanity's place in it. President Helen Carter stood in her office on Earth, looking at reports from across human space. The numbers were impressive. Humanity now controlled 47 colony worlds. Their population had grown to 23 billion. Their fleet was 3 times larger than it had been during the Ashkari rescue. But it was not just about numbers. Humanity had become important in ways that mattered more than ships and colonies. Admiral Chris Bennett entered her office. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had commanded Earth's defense fleet for 7 years now. Madam President, the latest intelligence reports are concerning. Helen nodded for him to continue. She trusted Bennett completely. He was a good officer and an honest man. The Viridians are making moves, Bennett said. Nothing direct. But they are putting pressure on our trade routes. Their ships are entering our space more often. They always have an excuse, but the pattern is clear. Helen was not surprised. The Viridian Empire had been watching humanity for years now. They did not like what they saw. The Viridians were old. Their civilization had existed for over 10,000 years. They had been the dominant power in the coalition for most of that time. They were used to being in charge. They made the rules and everyone else followed. Humanity did not follow very well. Dr. Emma Walsh had spent the past 15 years working with the Ashkari. Together they had created amazing things. The Ashkari telepathic abilities combined with human technology produced breakthroughs in medicine, communication, and navigation. Ashkari navigators were now on ships throughout the galaxy. They could sense routes through space that others could not. They could communicate instantly across vast distances using their mental connections. They had become incredibly valuable to the entire coalition. And they were humanity's closest allies. This alliance brought humanity influence and respect. Small species that had been ignored for centuries suddenly paid attention to what humans said. If humanity supported an idea, the Ashkari supported it too. And where the Ashkari went, dozens of other species followed. Lieutenant Greg Mason, now a commander in intelligence, tracked all of this carefully. He saw the pattern forming. The galaxy was dividing into camps, the old powers versus the new voices, the traditional order versus those who wanted change. Humanity was leading the charge for change. 3 years ago, President Carter had proposed reforms to the Coalition Council. The council was controlled by the apex species. The big 3, Viridians, Krell, and Zephlon. They made all the major decisions. Smaller species had no real voice. Helen wanted to change that. She proposed giving every species a vote, not just the powerful ones. One species, one vote. It was a simple idea. It was also revolutionary. The council has scheduled the vote. Helen told her cabinet during a meeting. 6 months from now, we have a real chance to pass this. Her advisors were excited but nervous. Ambassador Kyle Hughes, older now but still sharp, spoke carefully. Madam President, we have the votes from the smaller species. But the Viridians are furious. They see this as a direct attack on their authority. Good, Helen said firmly. Their authority is exactly what needs to be challenged. The galaxy should not be ruled by 3 species forever. Times change. The coalition needs to change with them. But the Viridians did not want to change. They liked the galaxy exactly how it was. The Viridian Emperor, whose name humans could barely pronounce, sent a formal warning to Earth. The message was clear even through diplomatic language. Stop pushing for reforms or there would be consequences. Helen's response was just as clear. Humanity would not stop. Justice mattered more than threats. Admiral Bennett increased patrols along human borders. He did not trust the Viridians. Captain Alex Rivers, one of his best officers, commanded a patrol group in the frontier regions. She reported increased Viridian military activity. They are running exercises near our colonies, Alex reported. Big exercises. Fleet-level maneuvers. It is like they are practicing for something. Bennett brought this information to the president. They are preparing for war, Helen, I am sure of it. But Helen had faith in the coalition's laws. The Viridians could not just attack another member species. There were rules against that. The council would stop them. Bennett was not so sure. Rules only mattered if someone enforced them. And who would enforce rules against the Viridians? They were too powerful. The Krell would not oppose them. The Zephlon would not get involved. The smaller species could not stop them. Humanity would be alone. Greg Mason's intelligence work uncovered something alarming. The Viridians were building ships in secret. Lots of ships. In restricted zones called the Void Sectors, far from normal space lanes, they had massive shipyards. Coalition law limited how big any fleet could be. This was to prevent arms races and keep the peace. The Viridians were breaking that law on a huge scale. Mason reported this to the Coalition Council. He provided evidence, sensor data, everything. The Council reviewed his report and dismissed it. Human paranoia, they called it. Unfounded accusations against a respected member species. No one investigated. No one cared. The Viridians were too important, too powerful. The Council did not want to upset them. Mason was furious but helpless. He knew what was coming. He just could not make anyone listen. On the Ashkari moon, Solara watched these events with concern. Her people, all connected telepathically, felt the tension building in the galaxy. They knew something bad was approaching. The Ashkari had grown to a population of 100,000 now. Still tiny compared to most species, but they were rebuilding. Their culture was slowly recovering from the trauma of losing their homeworld. Every Ashkari child was taught about the rescue. They learned the names of the human ships. They memorized the faces of the 847 humans who had died saving their species. They studied the meaning of the debt. Solara met with human ambassador Martin Price. He had replaced Kyle Hughes 2 years ago when Hughes finally retired. "Ambassador," Solara said quietly, "my people feel what is coming. The Viridians are going to attack humanity. Soon." Martin had heard the warnings, but hearing it from Solara made it feel more real. "The Council will not allow it." Solara's expression was sad. "The Council allowed my species to be abandoned to die. They will allow this too. The powerful do what they want. The weak suffer. That is how the galaxy works. Then we need to change how the galaxy works," Martin said. "Yes," Solara agreed. "And that is why the Viridians fear you. You actually might succeed. That is why they will strike first." She paused, then spoke more seriously. "Ambassador, when they attack, humanity must remember the favor. We will answer when you call. We will do anything required. My people are ready." Martin did not understand what she meant. The Ashkari were not warriors. They had no military. They were navigators and healers and scholars. How could they help against the Viridian war machine? But he thanked her anyway. It was good to have friends, even if those friends could not really fight. The months passed. Tension increased. Human colonies reinforced their defenses. The fleet drilled constantly. Everyone knew something was coming. On colony worlds throughout human space, families lived their normal lives. Children went to school. Adults went to work. They trusted that their government and military would keep them safe. They believed the Coalition's laws mattered. On New Seattle, the second largest human colony, Colonel Ben Harper commanded the defense garrison. 8 million people lived there. It was a beautiful world with oceans and mountains. Families had built lives there over 3 generations. Dr. Sophie Kane ran the main hospital in New Seattle's capital city. She was a talented doctor who had come to the colony 5 years ago. She loved the peaceful life, far from Earth's crowded cities. Neither of them knew that in 2 years their world would become a battlefield. Admiral Bennett continued to warn anyone who would listen. The Viridians were coming. The evidence was clear. But most of the Coalition did not want to believe it. War had not happened between major species in over a century. Surely it would not happen now. General Nathan Cross, who commanded Earth's ground forces, prepared his troops anyway. If war came, humanity would fight. They would not go down without resistance. President Helen Carter made one final attempt at peace. She sent a personal message to the Viridian Emperor. She offered to delay the reform vote. She offered to negotiate. She offered everything except surrender. The Emperor's response was cold. "Humanity has forgotten its place. You are a young species. You should learn from your elders, not lecture them. The galaxy has an order. That order must be maintained." The message was clear. Submit or be destroyed. Helen called her senior advisors together. Admiral Bennett, General Cross, Ambassador Price, and others. She asked them a simple question. "If we fight, can we win?" The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Bennett spoke. No, Madam President. Not in a straight fight. The Viridians have 10 times our military strength. If they commit fully, we will lose. Wait, then what do we do? Helen asked. Bennett straightened his shoulders. We fight anyway. Because if we surrender without fighting, we will never be free again. At least if we fight, we die standing up. It was not a good answer, but it was the only honest one. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning, Earth Standard Time. Colonel Ben Harper was having coffee in his office on New Seattle when the alarms screamed. For a moment, he thought it was a drill. Then he saw the sensor readings and his blood turned cold. Viridian battleships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel directly above the colony. Not one or two ships. Dozens of them. A full battle fleet. This is not a drill, he shouted into the base communications. All defense platforms activate. Get every civilian into the shelters now. But it was already too late. The Viridian ships opened fire immediately. No warning, no demands for surrender. They just started shooting. Orbital defense platforms exploded like fireworks. The colony's shield generators were hit in the first volley. Dr. Sophie Kane was in the hospital when the bombardment began. The building shook. Ceiling tiles fell. Lights flickered. She heard screams from the patients. Everyone to the basement, she yelled to her staff. Get the patients down there, move. Outside, the city was dying. Energy beams from orbit slammed into buildings. Entire blocks vanished in blasts of fire. The beautiful capital that had taken decades to build was being destroyed in minutes. Colonel Harper coordinated the defense, but there was little to defend with. New Seattle's garrison was meant to handle pirates and minor threats, not a full Viridian assault fleet. His soldiers fought bravely, manning the few weapons that still worked, but it was like throwing stones at a hurricane. Get the evacuation transports up, he ordered. Save everyone you can. The colony had transport ships for emergencies. They began launching, packed with civilians, families torn apart in the chaos, parents pushing children onto ships then being left behind. It was organized panic. In orbit, Captain Alex Rivers and her patrol group arrived at full speed. She commanded 6 ships. The Viridians had 40. The math was simple and terrible. All ships attack pattern Delta, Alex ordered. We need to buy time for those transports. Her pilots knew this was a one-way trip, but they did not hesitate. They dove straight at the Viridian fleet. Their weapons were small compared to the battleships, but they were fast and they were angry. Alex's ship, the Defiant, weaved through enemy fire. She targeted the Viridian ship closest to the evacuation transports. Her missiles hit its engines. The battleship slowed, turned to face her. That is right, Alex whispered. Look at me. Forget the transports. The Viridian ship fired. The Defiant's shields collapsed. Hull breaches opened. Alex kept flying, kept shooting until the last moment. Her final transmission went out to all human ships in range. Tell Earth. We held the line. Then her ship exploded, taking a Viridian destroyer with it. Her sacrifice bought the transports 8 more minutes. 3 million civilians escaped. 5 million did not. This same scene played out across 15 human colonies simultaneously. The Viridians had planned this perfectly. They hit everywhere at once, overwhelming defenses before anyone could respond. Admiral Bennett received the reports on Earth. Each one worse than the last, colony after colony going dark. Distress calls, then silence. His fleet was scattered across human space, caught completely off guard. Get every ship to battle stations, he roared. I want fleets moving to every colony under attack now. But space was vast. His ships were too far away. By the time they arrived, it would all be over. President Helen Carter watched the reports come in from her command center. Her face showed no emotion, but inside she was screaming. This was her fault. She had pushed for reforms. She had challenged the Viridians. And now millions were dying because of it. Madam President, her aide said quietly, the Viridian Emperor is broadcasting a message to the entire coalition. The Emperor's face appeared on screens across the galaxy. He looked calm, almost bored. The human species has violated ancient territorial agreements. They have repeatedly entered forbidden zones. They have shown disrespect to coalition authority. We have responded with proportional correction to their violations. This action is legal and justified under coalition law. It was all lies. There were no territorial violations. No forbidden zones had been entered. But the Emperor spoke with such confidence that many species would believe him. The message continued. Humanity must immediately withdraw from the coalition. They must surrender all territory beyond their home system. They must pay reparations for their violations. If they refuse, we will be forced to take further action. The broadcast ended. The Emperor had just demanded humanity's complete surrender, and he had made it sound reasonable. On New Seattle, the bombardment finally stopped after 72 hours. Colonel Harper emerged from his bunker to find his world in ruins. The beautiful capital was gone. Just smoking rubble and bodies. So many bodies Dr. Kane had saved who she could in the hospital basement. Maybe 200 people. The rest of the hospital staff was dead. Most of her patients were dead. She sat in the ruins and cried. Viridian ground troops landed to occupy what was left. They marched through the destroyed city with their weapons ready, claiming the colony as their prize. Harper wanted to fight them. He had 300 soldiers left. They could resist. But resistance meant more civilian deaths. The people who survived needed food, medicine, shelter. Fighting would only bring more destruction. He ordered his troops to stand down. They surrendered. It was the hardest order he ever gave. Across human space, the damage reports came in. 4 million civilians dead. 11 colonies destroyed or occupied. 47 human ships lost. Admiral Bennett's fleet was cut by nearly half. The galaxy watched and did nothing. President Carter called an emergency session of the Coalition Council. She stood before them with images of the destroyed colonies behind her. Images of dead children, of burning cities, of families torn apart. The Viridians attacked us without provocation, she said, her voice shaking with controlled fury. They murdered millions of civilians. They violated every law the Coalition claims to uphold. We demand justice. We demand they be punished for this crime. The council chamber was silent. Then the Viridian representative stood. Humanity lies. They violated our territory. We have evidence. The humans are warmongers who endanger galactic peace. President Carter slammed her hand on the podium. Show your evidence, then. Show the council this territory we supposedly violated. The Viridian smiled coldly. The evidence is classified for security reasons. It was absurd. Obviously absurd. But the council accepted it. The Krell representative abstained from voting. The Zephlon representative abstained from voting. The smaller species were too scared to speak up. The Secretary General, a coward named Varn from a species no one had heard of before he got the job, offered a compromise. Perhaps both sides have legitimate grievances. Humanity can remain in the coalition if they accept Viridian occupation of the contested colonies, pay appropriate reparations, and cease their disruptive political activities. Helen stared at him in disbelief. They murdered 4 million people. And you want us to pay them? Varn looked uncomfortable but did not back down. The alternative is expulsion from the coalition and possible further military action. This compromise keeps the peace, and this compromise rewards evil, Helen shouted. You are telling every species in the galaxy that if they are strong enough, they can kill whoever they want and face no consequences. But the council did not care. The vote went forward. The compromise was approved. Humanity could stay in the coalition if they accepted defeat and humiliation. Helen returned to Earth in a dark mood. Her cabinet waited for her decision. Would they accept the council's terms, or would they fight? Admiral Bennett spoke first. If we accept, we lose anyway. We become a subject species. We will never be free. They will push us more and more until we have nothing left. But if we fight, we die, said General Nathan Cross. Our fleet cannot beat them. We can make them bleed, but we will lose. Dr. Emma Walsh, who had been quiet this whole time, finally spoke. There is another option. Everyone turned to look at her. She had been working with the Ashkari for 15 years. She knew them better than any human alive. The Ashkari owe us a favor, Emma said simply. Helen shook her head. Emma, the Ashkari are not warriors. They have no military. How can they help against the Viridian Empire? Emma smiled, but it was a cold smile. You do not understand what the Ashkari are. You do not understand what they have been doing for the past 15 years. And you definitely do not understand what their favor really means. She pulled up a secure communication channel. We need to send Ambassador Price to the Ashkari moon. Today, right now. And we need to call in the favor. All of it. Helen was not sure this would help, but they had no other options. Make the call, she ordered. Ambassador Martin Price flew to the Ashkari moon that same day. He went alone as Solara had requested, He expected to find a small colony still recovering from near extinction. What he found shocked him to his core. The Ashkari moon had changed. There were new facilities everywhere. Training grounds, command centers, communication arrays. The peaceful species of navigators and healers had been preparing for war. Solara met him at the central hall. She looked older than when he last saw her, but her eyes burned with purpose. "You have come to call the favor," she said. It was not a question. Martin nodded. "The Viridians have attacked us. Millions are dead." The Ashkari moon transformed overnight. What had been a peaceful settlement became a war planning center. Ships arrived from across the galaxy, carrying representatives from dozens of species that no one knew were allied with humanity. President Helen Carter watched the arrivals with amazement. Small species she had barely heard of were sending their best people to help. The Tauren, skilled engineers. The Velk, masters of electronic warfare. The Quinn, whose tiny ships could slip past any sensor. "How did you do this?" she asked Solara during a secure communication. Solara's image on the screen showed a slight smile. "We simply talked to them. We told them about humanity, about how you saved us when the powerful said we were not worth saving. We asked them a simple question. Would you rather live in a galaxy ruled by compassion or by fear?" Many chose compassion. The plan the Ashkari had developed was complex. It had 3 parts, each depending on the others. First, expose the truth. The Viridians had lied about everything. They needed the entire galaxy to know it. Second, strike fast and surgical. Do not try to conquer the Viridian Empire. That was impossible. Instead, destroy their ability to project power. Remove their claws. Third, create a new order. Use the chaos to force real change in the coalition. Make sure this could never happen again. Admiral Bennett gathered his fleet commanders for briefing. The room was tense. These officers had just watched colonies burn. They had lost friends, family, fellow soldiers. They wanted revenge. "This is not about revenge," Bennett told them firmly. "This is about justice. We are going to dismantle the Viridian war machine. We are going to show the galaxy that might does not make right. But we must be precise. We must be surgical. We are not butchers." Captain Victoria Lane commanded the carrier group that would lead the first strike. She was young for such responsibility, only 32, but she was brilliant and fearless. "Sir, the plan calls for us to hit the Void Sector shipyards first. Those are the most heavily defended targets in Viridian space." Bennett nodded. "Yes, and we will have Ashkari navigators guiding every ship. They know routes that the Viridians do not even know exist. We will arrive before they know we are coming." Commander Ryan Brooks led the special operations teams. His Marines would board Viridian installations and capture critical data cores. It was the most dangerous part of the mission. "My people are ready, sir. We will get the job done." On Earth, President Carter prepared for the hardest speech of her life. She would address not just humanity, but the entire coalition. The message needed to be perfect. Dr. Emma Walsh helped her write it. "You need to speak to the small species," Emma advised. "The ones who live in fear. Show them that standing up to bullies is possible. Show them they are not alone." The countdown began. 3 days until Operation Reckoning would launch. 3 days to finalize every detail. 3 days before humanity would either win its freedom or be destroyed. Solara spent those 3 days in deep meditation with her people. The entire Ashkari collective joined their minds. They were about to do something that had never been done before. They would coordinate a galaxy-wide operation using only their telepathic connection. 3,000 Ashkari were scattered across coalition space, working on various ships and stations. All of them would act simultaneously. All of them were ready to die if necessary. On New Seattle, Colonel Harper and the survivors lived under Viridian occupation. The aliens were cruel masters. Food was rationed. Movement was restricted. Anyone who resisted was executed publicly. Dr. Kane continued to run her makeshift hospital, treating the wounded as best she could with limited supplies. She had no idea that help was coming. She just tried to keep people alive one more day. Harper received a secret message through channels he thought were dead. It was from Earth Command. Just 3 words, "Hold on soon." He did not know what it meant, but it gave him hope. The day before the operation, Ambassador Martin Price met with Solara one final time. He had grown to respect this alien leader deeply. She She carried the grief of 12 billion dead on her shoulders, yet she never wavered. "Solara," he said quietly, "are you sure about this?" "Once we start, there is no stopping. Your people will be targets. The Viridians will hunt every Ashkari they can find." She looked at him with those large, sad eyes. "Ambassador, my people died once already. 12 billion souls extinguished in an instant. The 3,000 who remain exist only because of humanity. If we must die to repay that debt, then we die. But we will die free, fighting for something good. That is more than we ever hoped for." Martin felt tears on his face. "Thank you," was all he could say. "No," Solara replied. "Thank you for showing the galaxy what goodness looks like." Operation Reckoning began at midnight, Earth Standard Time. The first action was information warfare. Simultaneously, every data network in Coalition space received a massive transmission. It came from everywhere at once, impossible to block or trace. The transmission contained evidence, hard evidence of Viridian crimes, records of species they had exterminated in secret, files showing how they had fabricated the charges against humanity, proof of their illegal fleet construction in the void sectors, documentation of bribes paid to Coalition officials. Most damaging of all, recordings of Viridian leaders discussing their plans. "We must destroy humanity before they inspire others to challenge us. Democracy is a disease that must be eliminated." The transmission ended with President Carter's speech. She stood before the camera looking directly at billions of beings across the galaxy. "People of the Coalition," she began, "for too long this galaxy has been ruled by fear. The strong do what they want. The weak suffer. That is not justice. That is not civilization. That is tyranny." She let that sink in, then continued. "The Viridian Empire attacked humanity because we dared to suggest that all species deserve a voice. They murdered 4 million civilians to teach us our place. The Coalition did nothing. Not because the laws did not exist to punish them, but because no one had the courage to enforce those laws." Her voice grew stronger. "Humanity refuses to accept this. We refuse to live in a galaxy where might makes right. Today we take action, not for conquest, not for revenge, but for justice, for every species that has been oppressed, for every voice that has been silenced, for every dream of a better future that has been crushed." She leaned forward. "To the small species watching this, you are not alone. To those who dream of freedom, help is coming. To the powerful who abuse their strength, your time is ending." The speech ended. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Then chaos erupted. On dozens of worlds, minor species rose up against Viridian occupation forces. They had been planning this for months, coordinated secretly by Ashkari telepaths. The timing was perfect. Simultaneous rebellions across 100 systems. The Viridian military tried to respond, but suddenly, their communications were a mess. Orders got confused. Reports contradicted each other. Ships that should have been coordinating were instead receiving conflicting instructions. The Ashkari had infiltrated their command structure completely. Now they were tearing it apart from inside. While the Viridians struggled with chaos, human fleet struck. Captain Victoria Lane's carrier group appeared in the void sectors, guided by Ashkari navigators through routes that should not exist. They arrived directly on top of the secret shipyards. The Viridians had been building a super fleet here. Massive warships designed to enforce their will across the galaxy. 200 ships under construction, nearly complete. "All wings launch," Victoria ordered. "Target the incomplete ships first. Destroy everything." Her pilots flew through the shipyards like a storm. Missiles and energy beams tore into the defenseless construction frames. Ships that had taken years to build were destroyed in minutes. The Viridian defenders finally responded, but by then it was too late. Half the superfleet was already burning. Victoria's ships fought a running battle as they retreated. But they had accomplished their mission. The pride of the Viridian military, their secret weapon to dominate the galaxy, was destroyed. Simultaneously, Commander Ryan Brooks led his Marines onto Viridian command stations. They needed to capture data cores containing evidence of more crimes and, more importantly, the command codes for Viridian defense systems. The fighting was brutal. Viridian soldiers were tough and well-trained, but human Marines had fury on their side. They had watched colonies burn. They had lost friends. They fought with a desperate intensity that the Viridians had never faced before. Brooks personally led the assault on Command Station 7. His team took heavy casualties, but they reached the core. As Viridian reinforcements closed in, Brooks downloaded everything and transmitted it to the fleet. "Data secure," he shouted. "Fall back." His team fought their way out. Not all of them made it, but the mission succeeded. Across the galaxy, the coordinated operation unfolded. Human ships hit Viridian supply depots, communication hubs, fleet bases, always surgical, always precise, never targeting civilians. The Ashkari guided every strike. Their telepathic network provided real-time intelligence that no electronic system could match. When Viridian ships moved to defend one location, the Ashkari knew instantly and redirected human forces elsewhere. It was like fighting an enemy who could read your mind. Because in a way, humanity could. The Viridian Emperor stared at the terms humanity demanded. 7 days ago, these demands would have been laughable. Now they were inevitable. His advisors argued in his throne room. Some wanted to continue fighting. Others advocated surrender. But everyone could see the truth. The war was already over. Humanity had won, not through superior numbers or better weapons. They had won through intelligence, coordination, and the loyalty of allies who owed them everything. They had won because they fought for something real while the Viridians fought only to maintain power. On the 6th day, the Emperor made his decision. He appeared before the Coalition Council to announce his acceptance of humanity's terms. His pride was shattered, but at least his species would survive. "The Viridian Empire accepts responsibility for the unprovoked attack on humanity," he said, each word clearly painful. "We will withdraw from all occupied colonies immediately. We will pay reparations as demanded. We will dismantle our offensive fleet under supervision." President Helen Carter watched the broadcast from Earth. She felt no joy, only exhaustion. Millions were still dead. Nothing could change that. But at least their deaths would mean something. Admiral Bennett ordered the fleet to begin escort duty. Viridian forces would withdraw from human colonies under close watch. Any treachery would be met with immediate destruction. But the Viridians were broken. There would be no more tricks. Colonel Harper stood in the ruins of New Seattle when the Viridian troops began leaving. His people emerged from hiding to watch their occupiers depart. No one cheered. The cost had been too high for celebration. Dr. Sophie Kane joined him. She looked older than her years, worn down by months of treating the wounded with inadequate supplies. "Is it really over?" she asked. Harper nodded slowly. "For now. But this colony will take decades to rebuild. The scars will last even longer." Across the 11 occupied colonies, similar scenes played out. Liberation brought relief but not happiness. Too many had died. Too many families were destroyed. The victory was real, but so was the grief. The Coalition Council convened for an emergency session. The old order was collapsing. The Viridians, who had dominated for millennia, were humiliated. The Krell and Zephlon, who had stood by and done nothing, were discredited. The smaller species were demanding change. Ambassador Martin Price addressed the council. He stood where President Carter had stood weeks ago, begging for justice. This time, everyone listened. "The Viridian attack revealed the truth about this coalition," Martin said. "The laws exist only to protect the powerful. Justice is a word without meaning. The strong do as they please while the weak suffer. This cannot continue." He gestured to representatives from dozens of small species standing behind him. These species stood with humanity. They risked everything to fight for justice. They deserve a voice in how this galaxy is governed. The Krell representative tried to object. "The old system has maintained peace for centuries." "Change is dangerous," Martin laughed bitterly. "Peace? You call it peace when the Viridians exterminated 3 species in the last century alone? You call it peace when the powerful crush anyone who threatens them? That is not peace. That is oppression enforced by fear." The vote came quickly. Every species would have representation on a new council. Decisions would be made democratically. The age of the apex species ruling by decree was over. The new coalition charter was written over the next 3 months. It included protections for minority species, limits on military power, and mechanisms to hold the powerful accountable. It was not perfect, but it was better. President Carter signed it on behalf of humanity during a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. "This charter is written in the blood of millions who died fighting for it," she said. "Let us honor their sacrifice by building a galaxy worth living in." The Ashkari moon held its own ceremony. A memorial wall was constructed, listing every individual who had died during Operation Reckoning. The human names and the Ashkari names were placed side by side. 3,200 Ashkari had fallen during the operation. Some killed in combat, others executed by Viridians when their role in the uprising was discovered. Still others who simply burned out from maintaining the telepathic network too long. Solara stood before the wall with Ambassador Martin Price. Her people had paid a terrible price. Nearly 3% of their entire species. But the debt was honored. Is it enough? Martin asked quietly. Can we call the debt paid now? Solara shook her head gently. The debt can never be fully paid, Ambassador. You saved our entire species from extinction. We can never truly repay that. But it has been honored. We fought beside you. We bled beside you. We died beside you. That matters. She touched the wall, running her fingers over the names. These Ashkari died free, fighting for something good. Our people who died when our sun collapsed had no such choice. So in a way you gave these people a gift too. You gave them a meaningful death. Martin did not know how to respond to that, so he simply stood with her in silence, honoring the dead. On Earth, society struggled to process what had happened. They had gone to war. They had won. But the cost was staggering. 4 million civilians dead in the initial attacks, another 50,000 military casualties during the counteroffensive. Entire colonies devastated. The government established funds to help the survivors. Reconstruction efforts began immediately. But money and buildings could not heal all wounds. Trauma counselors worked overtime. Support groups formed. People grieved together. Captain Victoria Lane received a medal for her role in destroying the Void Sector shipyards. She accepted it with mixed feelings. Yes, the mission succeeded, but she had lost 37 pilots under her command. Their faces haunted her dreams. Commander Ryan Brooks returned to Earth to recover from his wounds. The assault on Command Station 7 had left him with injuries that would never fully heal. But he considered himself lucky. 40% of his Marines had died in that mission. Admiral Bennett became a hero to many, the man who led humanity to victory. He hated the attention. All he could think about was Captain Alex Rivers and the others who had sacrificed themselves to buy time for evacuations. They are the real heroes, he told reporters. I just gave the orders. The Viridian Empire began its long decline. Without their military dominance, their influence crumbled. Species that had been forced into their sphere of power drifted away. Their economy suffered under the weight of reparations. Some humans wanted to see them destroyed completely. President Carter refused. We fought for justice, not revenge. The Viridians will face consequences for their crimes, but we will not become the monsters we defeated. The reparations were split between humanity and the other species the Viridians had oppressed. It was not enough to undo the harm, but it was something. And importantly, it established the principle that powerful species could be held accountable. 2 years after the war ended, the first meeting of the new Coalition Council was held. Every species sent a representative. The chamber had to be expanded to hold them all. President Carter, now stepping down after 2 terms in office, attended as an observer. She watched as species that had never had a voice before participated in galactic governance. It was messy and chaotic, but it was democracy. Admiral Bennett, also retiring, joined her. Do you think it will last? He asked. This new order we built? Helen considered the question carefully. I think it has a chance, not because everyone suddenly became good, but because we proved that the old way could be challenged. We showed that might does not have to make right. Future generations will remember that. She smiled slightly. And if someone tries to go back to the old ways, they will remember what happened to the Viridians. They will remember that humanity and its allies can shake the stars when pushed. On New Seattle, reconstruction continued. The colony would never be what it was before, but it was growing again. Colonel Harper, now retired, had stayed to help rebuild. He felt he owed it to those who died. Dr. Kane stayed too. She ran a new hospital, training the next generation of doctors. She made sure they understood the cost of war, so hopefully they would work to prevent the next one. Children who survived the occupation were growing up. Some would carry scars forever, but others spoke of becoming diplomats, peacekeepers, bridge builders. They wanted to make sure no one else experienced what they had. The galaxy settled into its new reality. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts and injustices, but there was also hope. The small species had a voice now. The powerful could be held accountable. Change was possible. Admiral Jake Morrison, who had started everything by rescuing the Ashkari 16 years ago, was now very old. He had retired to a quiet colony world where he spent his days teaching at a university. Students often asked him if he knew his decision to save the Ashkari would lead to all of this. He always laughed. Of course not. I just saw people who needed help and I helped them. That is what humans do. One student, a young woman planning to join the diplomatic corps, pressed him. But Admiral, you changed the galaxy. You started a chain of events that reshaped everything. Morrison smiled. I did not change anything. I just did what was right. The galaxy changed itself. We proved that compassion matters, that honor matters, that standing up for justice even when it costs everything matters.